Hello guys, it is movie review time. I recently went to see After the Hunt, which is this new film with Julia Roberts in the leading role. And I had seen the trailer for this a couple of times before when I've been to a cinema. So I was super intrigued by this for actually several reasons. First and foremost, it's actually the academia setting that got me because I'm sort of in academia as well. So, just in general, this setting is interesting to me. And based on what the story is, I thought that this also adds a few very interesting layers to the story that you would not necessarily have the same way in another setting, right? And then, of course, there is the story, which from the trailer seemed absolutely fascinating. So then I went to see the movie, and yeah, I did not love that film, unfortunately. I was so prepared to be blown away by this. I was very excited to go see it, but no. And I feel like there is also a very, very specific reason as to why the movie did not work for me. And that is the movie is trying to be ambiguous to a fault. So if you have seen the trailer, you know that mainly the story revolves around an accusation being made, and then Julia Roberts is sort of caught in between both parties and trying to figure out what actually happened, who is lying, who's saying the truth, right? And the thing is, the film is trying so hard to not commit to any of the versions of the story, to be so ambiguous from the first minute to the last, that the whole picture just feels very meh, for lack of a better word, to be honest. Because it's just, there is not that much depth to any of the sides, any of the things that is going on, because the movie tries to be as vague as humanly possible about pretty much anything that is going on. And there were also some things that didn't really make sense to me, even if we ignore the so hard tried ambiguity. I think to discuss this, we definitely are getting into spoiler territory, okay? So consider yourselves warned right now, okay? Okay, good. Still with me. So, as I said, the movie revolves around an accusation being made. We have Julia Roberts, who's the mentor and advisor to a young PhD student. And there is Andrew Garfield, who is also an, I assume, assistant professor in her department, and they're both sort of vying for tenureship. And then Julia Roberts had been hosting a party at her home with her husband, and everybody leaves. And then the next day, her student makes the accusation that Andrew Garfield assaulted her in some way, shape, or form. We don't really know what happened. And to be very clear, I don't think that the movie needs to be show or say in detail what happened. This is not what I'm saying when I'm complaining that the movie is too ambiguous. Like this, that is not needed. But on the other side, there's Andrew Garfield saying that, hey, that did not happen. Yeah, I was having a chat with her. Then I called her out for her thesis being essentially pilfered from other works. Like this, nothing about it is original. It's plagiarized. And then he claims that she made the accusation to get back at him. So, Joe Roberts, as I said, is caught in between. Again, the premise is so interesting, right? So, as we are meandering through non-committal ambiguity, we sort of get the vague impression that the student is trying to emulate Julia Roberts to sort of slowly morph into her in a way. And the movie kind of strongly suggests that she made the accusations to sort of be like Julia Roberts. And now, why would she do that, you might say? So, I mentioned at the very start that there is a party at Julia Roberts' place, right? And her student goes to the bathroom, looks for more toilet paper in one of the cupboards, and finds a envelope taped to the bottom of the cupboard. Of course, when you're at somebody else's home, what else are you going to do but snoop? So she takes it out, there's a photo in there and a newspaper article, and she takes the newspaper article. And this is going to be important later on. I actually need to jump to almost the very end of the movie right now to explain something to you. Something else that really bugged me, and then we'll circle back to this, okay? Stay with me, please. So, almost at the very end, we actually learn what this newspaper article is about. Because Julia Roberts, she's in hospital because she had like a health issue, doesn't matter right now, but she admits that when she was very, very young, she was living in Germany, I presume, because the newspaper article is in Germany, it is in German, and she says that there was an older man and she sort of wanted to get with him, but he didn't want that, so she claimed he assaulted her and then later retracted the statement, but he committed suicide, and she's actually still in love with him, whatever. First of all, that whole part of the story, the whole revelation was completely unnecessary. It didn't add anything to the story. It didn't add anything to Julia Roberts' character. It didn't really add anything to what was happening in the movie. Just why was that needed? Why was that there? So, as I said, the thing is, her student finds said newspaper article that she, for some reason, had kept in an envelope. But the article is in German. And it isn't until very close to the end of the movie that we see the student opening up Google Translator and typing the entire article in there to understand what the article says. So the movie is insinuating that she's desperately trying to emulate Julia Roberts, but how would that have been the case if she obviously hadn't been able to understand the article, if it's only now after shit already hit the fan, it's only now that she understands what the article said. So this whole thing doesn't really make much sense. And again, we are just dabbling in this ambiguity in so many fields. Like, did what she said happen? Did what he said happen? Is she trying to do this because we never get any answers at all? And most infuriatingly, the movie has this sort of epilogue that takes place a few years after the events of the film. And that was another thing that felt so very unnecessary. Because it doesn't provide any sort of closure to the story that, as I said, doesn't commit to either side any version of the story. The epilogue doesn't resolve anything. It's just sort of Julia Roberts and her student meeting up for coffee, and they're having a little chat about what they're doing now. Julia Roberts is now dean of the university, so that's good for her. And her student is like, oh yeah, I'm getting married, blah, blah, blah. And nothing is really addressed or discussed that relates to the movie. And there are also so many topics raised in the movie that aren't explored. For example, as I said, there was an accusation of plagiarism. And at some point, Julia Roberts even says, oh, I am aware that she's plagiarizing. She is not original in any way, shape, or form. But nothing is ever done with this. This is going nowhere. This thread of the story is not picked up ever again or discussed or has any sort of repercussions for a student, right? So why is this there? Why did this have to be part of the story if we're not doing anything with it? And we also have Julia Roberts, who has some health struggles, and there is potentially some substance abuse going on, and there was an issue with that. But then also this never gets explored either, like any real repercussions that happen after that. There is like one sentence said in the movie that like her tenure track thing is on hold now, but I guess nothing happened because she's now dean of the university. So again, what was the point to this plot? Nothing. There's also these weird discussions within her marriage where, as I said, towards the end of the movie, she says that she's sort of still in love with this man from way back when. So also, what is the point to her marriage? Like, does she even like her husband? Like, what is... Their whole dynamic in the movie is very weird, but again, it's just sort of there. We do not explore this theme properly. So just so many elements of this movie feel pointless because they don't seem to go anywhere. And even the main plot of the movie doesn't really go anywhere because we are so desperately trying to stay ambiguous and not commit to anything that no real depth can develop on either front, on either argument in a way. And I think this is what makes the movie so disappointing, because this could have been great. I do think the premise is super interesting. What the trailer showed or led me to expect was such a cool movie. I still see all the potential in the world for this film. Had it not tried so hard to avoid going in any actual direction. But yeah, that's how I felt watching this. Yeah, big disappoint. Anyway, maybe you loved the movie. Actually, let me know in the comments what you think. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.